You said you love my cooking. She grinned, setting the plate down in front of me. My name is Elliot. I am 41 years old and I have been a paramedic in Charleston, South Carolina for the past 15 years. I met Natalie 6 years ago at a coffee shop near the hospital. She was reading a book about herbal remedies and I thought that was charming. We married 8 months later. The chicken salad she placed before me looked normal enough. White chunks mixed with celery, maybe some herbs, but the smell hit me before I could pick up the fork. Something sour. Something wrong. I had smelled spoiled food plenty of times in my line of work, responding to calls at neglected homes or dealing with food poisoning cases. This was close. Eat while it is still cold, Natalie said, her voice unusually cheerful. I watched her move to the counter and start assembling her own lunch. Turkey slices, fresh cheese, crisp lettuce, a completely different meal. She hummed while she worked, something she rarely did anymore. We had grown distant over the past year. Long silences at dinner, separate bedrooms for the past 3 months. She blamed my work schedule. I blamed her mood swings. Aren't you having any of the chicken salad? I asked. I already had some earlier, she replied without looking at me. Made a big batch this morning. I set the fork down and studied her. Natalie was 36, worked part-time at a wellness center downtown, and had recently started taking online courses in nutrition. She often talked about the power of natural ingredients and how food could heal or harm. I had always supported her interests, even when they seemed a bit extreme. She turned around and caught me staring at the untouched plate. Something wrong? She asked, tilting her head. Just tired from the double shift, I said. Let me wash my hands first. I walked to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. Something was happening here, something I could not quite name. Natalie had been acting strange for weeks, small things, forgetting to tell me about phone calls, moving my belongings without asking. Yesterday, I found my favorite coffee mug in the garbage, cracked down the middle. She said it must have fallen, but I had used it that morning without any damage. When I returned to the kitchen, she was sitting at the table with her sandwich, watching me expectantly. The smell from my plate seemed stronger now. I picked up the fork again and moved some of the chicken around. Underneath, I could see darker pieces mixed in with the white meat. The celery looked wilted and there was an oily film on top that had not been there before. This was not fresh food. This was something else entirely. I had always been the type of person who gave others the benefit of the doubt. Growing up in a family where my father worked 2 jobs and my mother managed 3 kids, I learned early that people made mistakes when they were stressed. When I became a paramedic, that mindset served me well. People called us on their worst days, and I found that patience and understanding usually worked better than judgment. Natalie had seemed like someone who shared those values. During our early relationship, she would pack healthy lunches for my shifts and leave encouraging notes in my uniform pockets. She talked about wanting to help people through nutrition and natural healing. I respected that. After dealing with overdoses and accidents every day, I appreciated her focus on prevention and wellness. But things had started changing about a year ago. Small comments at first. She would mention how paramedics were just band-aids on bigger problems, and how the medical system was designed to keep people sick. I tried to engage with her perspective, but she seemed less interested in discussion and more focused on being right. She started spending more time online, reading forums about alternative health and conspiracy theories. The distance between us grew. She stopped packing my lunches. She stopped asking about my day. When I tried to talk about calls that bothered me or colleagues who were struggling, she would change the subject or suggest that maybe I should find a different career. She said the stress was making me toxic, and that she could feel my negative energy affecting her own health. 3 months ago, I started sleeping in the guest room. She said my sleep schedule was disrupting her natural rhythms. I accepted that explanation, even though it hurt. I told myself that relationships went through rough patches and that we could work through this if we both tried. But now, sitting at this table with spoiled food in front of me and watching her eat her fresh sandwich, I realized that maybe only one of us had been trying. The phone calls she forgot to mention were probably important. The broken mug was probably not an accident. And this chicken salad was definitely not a mistake. I thought about the past few weeks. How she had insisted on doing all the grocery shopping alone. How she had started cooking meals separately, claiming she was following a special diet. How she would ask detailed questions about my work schedule and when I would be home. I had thought she was trying to be more organized, more supportive. Now I wondered if she had been planning something else entirely. The woman across from me, chewing her turkey sandwich and watching me with bright, expectant eyes, was not the person I had married. That person had been kind. This person was waiting for me to eat something that smelled like it had been sitting in the sun for days. I picked up a small piece of the chicken with my fork and brought it closer to my nose. The smell was unmistakable now. Rotten. Deliberately rotten. This was not food that had accidentally spoiled. This was food that had been left out, maybe mixed with something else, and then served to me with a smile. "Is everything okay?" Natalie asked, her voice still artificially sweet. "You seem to be taking a long time with that first bite." I set the fork down and looked directly at her. "How long has this been sitting out?" "What do you mean?" She laughed. "I made it fresh this morning, just like I said. It smells spoiled." Her expression shifted slightly. The cheerful mask slipped for just a moment and I saw something else underneath. Something cold. Something calculating. "Maybe your nose is off from all those chemicals you deal with at work," she said. "You know how that job affects your senses." I stood up from the table. My hands were steady, but my mind was racing. This was not a misunderstanding. This was not an accident. My wife had deliberately served me spoiled food and was now gaslighting me about it. The woman I had shared a bed with for years, the woman I had trusted with my life, was trying to poison me. "I think I will pass on lunch today," I said quietly. "But you love my cooking," she insisted, her voice getting sharper. "You always say how much you appreciate the effort I put in." I walked to the sink and washed my hands thoroughly. Behind me, I could hear her moving around the kitchen, probably putting away her own meal. When I turned around, she was standing near the refrigerator, arms crossed, studying me. "You know," she said, "I put special ingredients in that batch. Things that are really good for you. Herbs and supplements that could help with your stress levels." "Special ingredients?" "Just some natural additions. Things you probably would not understand." I felt a chill run down my spine. Special ingredients. Natural additions. She was admitting to putting something in my food, something beyond the obvious spoilage. This was not just negligence or even malice. This was planned, calculated, dangerous. I excused myself and went to the bathroom again. This time, I took out my phone and started thinking about what I needed to do. I could not eat that food. I could not pretend this was normal. And I definitely could not trust that this was the first time she had done something like this. When I came back to the kitchen, Natalie was loading the dishwasher, humming again. She looked up at me with that same bright smile. "Feeling better?" she asked. "Much better," I said. "Actually, I think I might be hungry after all." I sat back down at the table and reached for my phone, placing it casually next to my plate. "You know what? Before I eat, let me just check if there are any calls from work. Sometimes they need me to come in early." "Of course," Natalie said, but I caught the slight tension in her voice. "Take your time." I opened my phone and pretended to scroll through messages while actually navigating to the voice recording app. With practiced fingers, I started recording and placed the phone face down on the table, the microphone still picking up sound. In my job, documentation was everything. I had learned to gather evidence before acting. "So tell me more about these special ingredients," I said, picking up the fork again but not taking a bite. "I'm always interested in your nutrition research." Her face lit up with genuine enthusiasm. This was the opening she had been waiting for. "Well," she began, moving closer to the table, "I have been reading about how certain combinations can really affect someone's system. Not in a bad way, of course, but in a way that might help them understand their body better. That sounds fascinating. What exactly did you add?" Oh, just some herbs that can help with digestive sensitivity. And I mixed in some older protein to see how your body would handle the challenge. Your immune system is probably too dependent on fresh food. I kept my expression neutral, but my heart was pounding. She was openly admitting to contaminating my food. Older protein? The chicken salad from Sunday's batch. It has been sitting in the refrigerator for a few days. I thought it would be interesting to see how your system responds to something that is not perfectly fresh. Most people are too pampered when it comes to food safety. So this is like an experiment? Exactly, she said, clapping her hands together. I have been reading about how people in other cultures eat aged foods all the time, and they are perfectly healthy. Americans are too obsessed with expiration dates and refrigeration. I thought this could help you build tolerance. I nodded as if this made perfect sense while my mind reeled. She was describing deliberate food poisoning as if it were a health treatment. And the herbs you mentioned? Just some things to help with the process. A little extra iron supplement, some digestive aids. Nothing harmful, just things that might make the experience more educational. Educational. Yes. You work with sick people every day, but you have never really experienced illness yourself. I thought this might give you more empathy for your patients. The recording was capturing every word. She was not just admitting to food tampering, she was providing a detailed confession of her motivations. In her mind, she was helping me. In reality, she was describing assault. That is very thoughtful of you, I said. I had no idea you had put so much planning into this. I have been thinking about it for weeks, she continued, clearly pleased with my apparent interest. Ever since you mentioned that family that got food poisoning from the restaurant downtown, you seemed so dismissive of their suffering, like it was just part of life. I thought maybe you needed to understand what that feels like. I remembered that call. A family of 4, including 2 young children, had been hospitalized after eating contaminated seafood. I had not been dismissive of their suffering. I had been frustrated with the restaurant's negligence, but somehow in Natalie's mind, my professional response had been interpreted as callousness that needed correction. So this has been in the works for a while? Oh yes. I have been researching the best methods, the right combinations. I even tested some of the herbs on myself to make sure they would not cause any permanent damage. I am not trying to hurt you, Elliot. I am trying to help you grow. She reached across the table and touched my hand. Her skin felt cold, despite the warm kitchen. I love you too much to let you stay closed off from experiences that could make you a better person. The woman I had married was gone. This person wearing her face and using her voice was someone else entirely. Someone who believed that poisoning me was an act of love. I excused myself to use the bathroom again, taking my phone with me. Once the door was locked, I stopped the recording and quickly sent it to my email account, then forwarded a copy to my brother James, who lived across town. If something happened to me, there would be evidence. My hands were shaking now, not from fear but from anger. How long had she been planning this? How many other experiments had she conducted without my knowledge? I thought back over the past few months, trying to remember times when I had felt sick or off after eating her food. There had been a few instances. A stomach bug that lasted 3 days in February. A headache that wouldn't go away after a dinner she had prepared. A night of nausea that I had attributed to stress from work. I had been slowly poisoned for months, and I had thanked her for taking care of me. I opened my phone again and called the non-emergency line for Charleston Police. This is Elliot McKinney. I am a paramedic with Charleston County EMS. I need to report attempted food poisoning. I have evidence, and the situation is ongoing. The dispatcher took my information and said an officer would be at my house within 20 minutes. I asked them to park down the street initially so I could finish gathering evidence. When I returned to the kitchen, Natalie was on her phone, speaking in a low voice to someone. She quickly ended the call when she saw me. Who was that? I asked. Just my sister. I was telling her about our conversation. What did you tell her? That you were finally starting to understand my perspective on health and wellness. She has been encouraging me to be more assertive about sharing my knowledge with you. So other people knew. This was not just Natalie's isolated delusion. She had been discussing her plans to tamper with my food with family members. I wondered how many people in her life had encouraged this behavior or at least failed to discourage it. "I think I am ready to try that chicken salad now," I said, sitting back down. "Really?" Her eyes brightened. "I am so glad you are open to new experiences." I picked up my phone and started another recording. "Before I eat, can you tell me again about all the special ingredients? I want to make sure I appreciate everything you put into this." She launched into another detailed explanation, this time adding information about the specific herbs she had used and where she had learned about their effects. She mentioned online forums, alternative health websites, and a book about food as medicine that had inspired her approach. The author talks about how modern people have lost touch with their body's natural ability to process different foods, she explained. "By exposing you to controlled challenges, I can help you develop stronger digestion and better overall health." "And the older chicken? How old exactly?" 5 days. Not long enough to be dangerous, but old enough to provide a good test for your system. I also added some of the juices from the bottom of the container, where the bacteria would be most concentrated. She was describing deliberate bacterial contamination as if it were a medical treatment. In her mind, she was a healer. In reality, she was a dangerous person who had weaponized food. The recording captured everything: her methods, her motivations, her complete lack of understanding about what she was actually doing. When the police arrived, they would have a clear picture of premeditated food tampering. "That sounds very thorough," I said. "You have really thought of everything." 20 minutes later, I heard a car door close outside. I looked out the window and saw Officer Stevens from the Charleston Police Department walking toward my front door. I had worked with him on several calls over the years, and I knew he would handle this professionally. "Excuse me," I said to Natalie. "I think someone is at the door." I opened it before he could knock. "Officer Stevens, thank you for coming." "Elliot, got your call. This is about food tampering?" "Yes. My wife has admitted to serving me spoiled food mixed with unknown substances. I have recorded evidence of her confession. She is still in the kitchen." His expression grew serious. "Is she aware that you have contacted police?" "No. She believes I am going to eat the contaminated food." "Okay. Let me come in and we can handle this properly." I led him into the kitchen where Natalie was still sitting at the table. When she saw the uniformed officer, her face went pale. "Natalie," I said calmly, "this is Officer Stevens. I have asked him to come because I am concerned about the food you prepared for me." "I don't understand," she stammered, looking back and forth between us. Officer Stevens introduced himself and asked if we could all sit down. "Mr. McKinney has reported that there may be an issue with food safety in your home. Can you tell me about the meal you prepared today?" "It is just chicken salad," Natalie said, her voice getting higher. "There is nothing wrong with it." "Ma'am, can you describe the ingredients and preparation method?" I watched as she tried to backtrack, claiming now that everything was fresh and safe. She had completely changed her story from the detailed confessions she had given me just minutes earlier. "That is interesting," Officer Stevens said, "because Mr. McKinney has provided me with a recording of a different conversation." He played back portions of the audio on his phone. Natalie's voice filled the kitchen, clearly describing how she had used 5-day-old chicken, added bacterial concentrates and mixed in unknown herbs as part of an experiment to test my immune system. As her own words played back, Natalie's expression crumbled. "That was taken out of context," she whispered. "Ma'am, this is a very clear recording of you admitting to food tampering with intent to cause illness. That is a serious crime." "I was trying to help him," she said, her voice breaking. "Everything I read said that controlled exposure could build immunity. I wasn't trying to hurt him." Officer Stevens looked at the plate of chicken salad, which was still sitting on the table where I had left it. "We are going to need to have this tested, and I need you both to come to the station so we can get formal statements." "Am I under arrest?" Natalie asked. At this point, you are being detained for questioning. Depending on what the food analysis shows and what you tell us at the station, charges may be filed." As he began reading her rights, Natalie looked at me with genuine confusion. "I don't understand why you called the police. I was trying to help you become healthier." "Natalie," I said quietly, "poisoning someone is not health care. It is assault." She started crying then, not the manipulative tears of someone trying to avoid consequences, but the genuine sobs of someone whose reality was collapsing. In her mind, she had been a caring wife conducting medical research. In actual reality, she had been slowly poisoning her husband for months. Officer Stevens called for backup and an evidence collection team. The chicken salad would be tested for bacterial contamination and unknown substances. My recordings would be analyzed and used as evidence. The laboratory results came back 3 days later. The chicken salad contained dangerous levels of Salmonella, E. coli, and an unknown herbal mixture that included concentrated iron supplements and digestive stimulants. According to the toxicologist, consuming the entire portion could have resulted in severe food poisoning, dehydration, and possible hospitalization. Detective Rodriguez called me at work to discuss the findings. "Mr. McKinney, we have enough evidence to charge your wife with reckless endangerment, food tampering, and attempted assault. The recordings you provided show clear intent and premeditation. What happens now?" "We will arrest her this afternoon. Given the evidence, the district attorney believes this case will likely result in a conviction. She could face up to 2 years in prison and mandatory psychological evaluation." When I came home that evening, Natalie was sitting on the front steps with a suitcase beside her. She had been released on bail but ordered to have no contact with me and to stay away from our house. "The lawyer says I need to move out," she said without looking up. "My sister is coming to get me." "Good. I still don't understand why you did this. I was trying to help you." I sat down next to her, but not close enough to touch. "Natalie, you poisoned me. Multiple times, apparently. That is not help. That is harm. But the research I did, the research was wrong. The forums you read were wrong, the people who encouraged you were wrong, and you were wrong." She finally looked at me, her eyes red from crying. "I thought if you understood what sick people went through, you would be more compassionate. I have been compassionate my entire career. What you did was not about making me better. It was about controlling me." A car pulled up, and her sister got out. She had always disliked me, and I could see the hostility in her face as she approached. "Come on, Natalie, let's go." Natalie stood up and picked up her suitcase. "I am sorry you feel this way," she said. "I am sorry you poisoned me," I replied. She walked away without another word. 6 months later, Natalie pleaded guilty to reckless endangerment and food tampering. She received 18 months of probation, community service, and mandatory counseling. The judge also issued a permanent restraining order. I filed for divorce immediately after her sentencing. She did not contest it. My colleagues at the station had been supportive throughout the entire process. A few of them admitted that they had noticed changes in my health over the past year, but had attributed them to job stress. Captain Williams gave me a week of paid leave to get my head straight and recommended a counselor who specialized in domestic abuse cases. "This was not your fault," Dr. Hansen told me during our first session. "Recognizing abuse when it comes disguised as care is incredibly difficult, especially when it involves someone you trust completely." The counseling helped. So did the distance from Natalie and her toxic influence. I started sleeping better, eating better, and feeling more like myself again. I moved to a smaller apartment downtown, closer to the station. I kept the furniture simple, and the refrigerator stocked with food I prepared myself. I learned to cook properly, following actual recipes instead of experimental nutrition theories. On weekends, I volunteered at a local food bank. There was something healing about handling safe, nutritious food and knowing it would help people instead of harm them. I started dating again after 8 months. Nothing serious, just coffee and dinner with people who understood that trust had to be earned slowly. I found myself paying attention to small details, watching how people treated food, how they talked about health, whether they respected boundaries. The experience had changed me, but not in the way Natalie had intended. Instead of making me more empathetic to illness, it had made me more aware of the people who cause it. I learned that sometimes the most dangerous person in your life is the one who claims to love you the most.